Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sally. Are we the only two here?
I'm not sure. I think they start at 10. I mean, like 12. So it's still like 1 minute away, I guess.
Okay. Let's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, the moderator hasn't joined, so it should be fine.
Yeah. So, which university are you from?
Oh, you mean which city I'm joining?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually at MIT in Cambridge, but I'm now traveling in China, so I'm joining from the Eastern track.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. Actually, it's 7:30 morning in India. So I joined here like on 7 o'clock, and since then I have been waiting. I don't know. I'm thinking whether I have clicked on some wrong Zoom link, joined some
Yeah,
other group.
Yeah, I think it's the correct link.
Okay.
Oh, are you the first presenter?
Yeah, moderator.
Ah, good luck.
Hello guys.
Hi.
Hi Vishwajeet. Hi Sally.
Hello.
Yes, actually we were in the headliner talk and that was why that we were a bit late. So please just wait a few minutes because still, people are on another room. Vishwajeet, you are the second presenter, right? Let me share my screen. You are the first presenter, am I right?
Yeah.
Great. And we have Maria as well. Hi, Maria. Maria is our Zoom coordinator and she will stay up to 4 p.m. Thanks, Maria, because I'm moderating this session up to 2, and then I have another presentation, another session, so I have to jump on the other one. But then Keseva will take the moderating role.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Let's just a few minutes. So, Vishwajeet, that's your name. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, it's correct.
Okay, great. And where are you joining from?
I'm currently in India, so at university campus, IIT Roorkee.
Which IIT?
Roorkee.
Oh, Roorkee. Yes. Okay. Great.
Do you know anyone from here, from transportation?
I may know, but I mix up because there are a few IIT.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. So I visited India and IIP Mumbai in 2019. Yes.
2019. Okay. I think at that time it was WCPR, I guess.
Sorry, what was it?
It was WCTR conference or any
WCTRS,
WCTR? Okay.
Yes, WCTRS conference, yes. So Vishwajeet, I think I made you co-host.
Okay. Shall I start or shall we wait for others to join?
No, just wait. Let's just wait a few minutes. We are still a bit early. Yeah. So can you introduce yourself, because we didn't get the bio from you.
Okay, no issue. Actually, I had emailed I had replied on that email actually. So there may be some communication issue or something. That's okay.
Yes. Oh, so you emailed your bio already?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Then I I must have missed it. The reason I have to apologize that I'm actually dealing with COVID even right now. So
Okay.
yeah, so I've got COVID last Friday, and it caused lots of hurdles on my end.
You should have taken Rex, I guess.
Yeah, so even I wasn't sure if I can talk, but thankfully my voice kind of recovered, although still I have very bad headaches, but that's good.
So you are doing fine now, or some saver?
Yes, yeah, well, I have to. No, I'm fine. I'm doing all right. Yeah. Okay. So, Vishwajeet, I would appreciate if I stop sharing, and then if you share your screen, and just please also introduce yourself first before starting. So then you will have about like 20 minutes for your presentation, and then 5 minutes Q&A.
It's 10 minutes.
Yes, 10 to 15 minutes, yes, whatever. Because we had a few presenters that they withdraw, that was why. So even you can talk longer as well if you have more slides. So that just a bit of please just mute yourself, everyone, and text your questions in the chat. And then, yeah, so I will attend to those questions after the presentation by Vishwajeet. So over to you, Vishwajeet.
Okay, thank you, Elnaz. Good morning in India and probably good noon in Australia. So myself, Vishwajeet, I'm a PhD candidate at IIT Roorkee. So I'll be talking on measuring passengers' perception to evaluate competitive public transport corridors, how to collect required data. So my co-author is Professor Rastogi from IIT Roorkee itself. So this is my presentation outline, where I'll speak about introductions, where I'll particularly talk about why survey methodology design in transit commuter survey is important, and we'll see what are the challenges in present era associated with questionnaire survey. Then we'll look at this need of the present study in terms of transit commuters importance satisfaction survey, in particular to developed and developing nations. And then the study objective for which I have done this, and to achieve those study objectives, the particular adopted research methodology. So when we'll look at certain questionnaire variants that we had designed, and those were pilot tested at two study area, and based on that the amendments that we had did based on the observation from those pilot study, that has helped me to carry out my main survey. So if you talk particularly to survey design methodology, it significantly impacts the result of any response-based study. It influences errors of variability and biasness from the survey instrument, from the enumerators, and from the respondents. So, however, if you apply ultra-modern or futuristic tools and techniques in the survey methodology, but a meager design in questionnaire instrument can mislead the outcome. And if you look at the transit commuter survey particularly, there are certain challenges associated with questionnaire design, survey participation rate, response rate, and cost associated with the mode, whichever we pick, like CAVI, CAPI, CATI, or PAPI. And there are onboard or on station kind of we can execute the survey. So if you look at this is a diagram like I have picked from one study. So it depicts economically and digital involvement across the globe for developed and developing nations with respect to economy and digital involvements. So what happens in generally questionnaire survey is being conducted generally in developed nation online, but in developing nations it is still being preferred offline mode because there is not that much digital involvement among the users or respondents there. But when we look at this commuters important satisfaction survey, particularly in developing nations, it is still being preferred offline, and in developed nation also it is preferred offline because the transit users are being intercepted on transit route itself. So it is very difficult to target them for such kind of a study. So if you look at this kind of particularly based study, there is one cervical instrument that is being designed by Parshuraman, which particularly deals in production and management area. But there are certain studies ongoing in this area. They are being frequently referred to this instrument. So there are very little literatures available in this area. And if you look at this, it talks about whatever the satisfaction ratings plots that are being from any kind of consumers, commuters. So those are negatively skewed. So we'll look at this in this presentation, all this. So the objective is to fill this gap by exploring the challenges and processes associated with the survey instrument design, execution and administration. And outcomes would be in terms of examination and standardization of 6-based questionnaires that will be particularly to assess the performance of transit systems and to arrive at suitable data collection methodology. And it will be beneficial to transit professional researchers, operators from developed and developing nations who would like to conduct such a survey for assessing performance method of transit system. And the research methodology that is being adopted is we have designed certain questionnaire instrument and certain variants. Those were pilot tested and the improvisation were noted down. If any improvisation is required, were revised, again tested, and until there is no improvisation is required. So the questionnaire was then assessed with in terms of 4 assessment technique with respect to the participation rate, completion rate, survey unit cost, and then questionnaire validations. Once this is finalized, we prepared a strategy for administration execution of the survey and the standardized questionnaires, which can be applicable to any tier like metropolitan city, small city, and different forms of transit system. So our objective is to measure transit service quality from commuters' perceptions, which falls under 3 measurement variables: operational, functional, infrastructural. So we refer to the literature. We found that 9 prime service quality categories, which are listed here. So each category is having certain number of sub-level attributes, where total constitutes around 31 sub-level attributes. So there can be like certain number of attributes which can be left, like driving behavior if we are talking about rail transit. So that kind of attributes can be removed, but overall it will be around 30, 28, 31 range of sub-level attributes for any transit system. So then we designed the questionnaire. So of course, for satisfaction and importance information constitutes 2 parts of this questionnaires. And if we look for this customer segmentation, that we require travel and personal information from the respondent. So 4 parts were created and they were grouped in an order in such a way that it smoothens the interview and ensures the collections of quality responses. The scales were considered in satisfaction scales, it was 0 to 10. In importance, GUT scales, which is a different scales to collect this importance ratings from the based on this gravity, urgency, and trend of commuters. For travel details, we use close-coded and mix of nominal and ordinal scales. For personal, we use the nominal scales. So 3 formats were created, wherein format 1, important sections we consider only important section. In format 2, satisfaction information. In format 3, satisfaction as well as importance. And all 3 formats out of those 2, format F1 and F2 were conducted through paper-based questionnaires and QR code questionnaires. And format 3 we were only paper based. At first we pilot tested format 1 at Jaipur city of India. So and then observations were revised in format F2 and F3. Then again we tested format F2 and F3 in Delhi, the capital of India. And then the corrections were revised in format 2, and then format 2 again were tested as a third level pilot. So 3 pilot surveys were conducted here, and in all these questionnaires, travel and personal sections were common. So we'll see. So these are the in Delhi. This is bus routes, 453 bus routes of Delhi, and 373 kilometer of metro routes of metro network in Delhi. And wherein 26 bus routes were in Jaipur and 9.63 kilometers of one route corridor is operational, and the expansion is still going on in Jaipur city. So these two different cities were selected for this to bring these questionnaires and respondent characteristics to standardize this procedure. So on first pilot survey, format 1 where like more samples were collected to make the observations, to note down the observations and corrections were made. So format 1 and format 2. In format 3, the major problem where that little samples is here, because the scales that we chosen were fractional scales here. Fractional in terms of like on 0 to 10, the respondents can respond in terms of fraction like 9.5, 9.8, 3.2 something, rather than the discrete scales in format 3, format 2 that we have used, where the respondent can respond in integer format like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that way. So, but the respondents were reluctant to use this format 3, due to which these little formats were collected in that sense. So if you look at this data collection from here, though unfortunately we got female and male respondents equal proportion in both transit system. Age group 15 to 45 years were majority respondent. 50% were at least graduate, wherein metro users are more than bus users. And in terms of ownership, around 60% of metro users have at least a vehicle and license, wherein around 40% of bus users have at least a vehicle. So the questionnaire test we applied here. So for the participation rate, number of questionnaires collected from the respondents to the number of questionnaire or QR code based slip distributed were used, wherein we found that in QR code around 37%, wherein paper based 71% participation rate were observed. So we applied Z test for proportion to for 95% of confidence level and 99% confidence level. We found that Z calculated were higher, so it was rejected. So we calculated that both of the test, both of the mode of the survey were significantly different to each other. When we applied this completion rate, we found that irrespective of the mode of the survey, 97% completion rates were observed. So we applied, and to understand non-reporting and inaccurate informations, we applied two logical tests in the questionnaire with access egress information with socioeconomic information. So the access mode, if it is car, so with respect to the cost, access time, and access distance will be in a synchronized manner, so that we apply this logical test. And again for the socioeconomic and this like parking experience, affordability kind of questions were applied. So when we look at this part-wise questionnaires information, we found the satisfaction and travel information had suffered major partial completeness. And when we particularly look at this inside this section, we found that there were certain questions like complaints, parking, infrastructure, travel route information. These informations are suited that customer need to experience. Respondents need to experience before answering, so they cannot answer. Wherein the travel information part, we found out there are certain like questions, distance and all, faring distance. So it is travel impedance that are intangible. So like travel cost, they are easy to fill than this distance or travel time. So then we applied this cost analysis, wherein we summed up this enumerator's expenses per questionnaire, printing cost, and travel passes that is being used by enumerators to conduct the survey. So we calculated, we found 40 rupee paper based, This is in INR, Indian currency. So this is 40 rupee paper based and 10 rupee QR code based. Out of which, if you look, this 35 rupees, which is 87% of the total expenses, goes to manpower hiring in paper based service. So that is used here. So then we applied this instrument validity and reliability check. We performed, since the 31 sub-level attributes that were taken from the literature, so theoretical construct is valid here. And but to check the reliability among this survey rating, we performed this Cronbach alpha test. So we found that 0.94 and 0.9 bus and metro, which is excellent in terms of reliability measures. So the inference that we are observing here, when we from format F1 and F2, when we introduce this rating as like 1 to 10 here, so we explicitly define that 3 is least important, 5 is moderately important, 7 is higher important, and 10 is like very high important. So when we explicitly define, the respondents pick those particularly value only. So that indicates the carryover effect, wherein when we define the only extreme value on the scale 0 to 10, so this is uniform kind of effect we observe. So that carryover effect was not here. So we can say that we need not to give this mid value and explain this value to the respondent. As I said earlier, this fractional value and discrete, wherein the respondents were reluctant to use fractions, so we went for this discrete. So format 3 were dropped. So this is the plotting of satisfaction level. When we plot that, we found that around mean of 7.13 satisfaction, the measure of this respondents rating were clustered. So this is negatively skewed in terms of like when the facility is too good, the responses will particularly will be on higher side of this satisfaction rating. When the service is bad, so the satisfaction rating will be on the lower satisfaction side of this. Agri cluster would be on lower satisfaction right side of. So this kind of skewness we did also observe in commuter satisfaction survey. So instrument were amended in terms of like there were certain questions like frequency of trips that were modified to bring more than 1 and 6, and there were categories of ticket holders, those like their metro card plus passport durations were noted down. There were questions like if they are traveling with someone, so the cost has to be distributed, but the respondent responded in such a way they calculated only for themselves, like how much time they had, how much cost they had paid for to access this service. So they have answered by they calculated by themselves. So this information become redundant. As I said, like there are certain questions they need to be experienced before, so they made conditional yes or no. So if they have used, then only they have to respond. There were socioeconomic information were missing, so these were introduced. Due to matrix, so due to complexity of the scale and due to longer length of the survey, response rates became less. So that were used as an expert survey in further survey. So observation that we made, that the questionnaire completion time should be such a way that it should be less than this length of this travel time of passengers in that corridor, so that they can respond more. The regular commuters, they wish to travel on 8 to 1200, 1400 to 1800 on weekday. So the survey should be conducted in majorly in those duration to target more population. A short and crisp information to the respondents about survey objective is information to collect these responses. So that also help us to get more responses from respondent. So, and there were certain information in terms of accuracy travel time when we asked from the respondent. So what they did, they do not include the time they took to take stairs, ramp or escalators to reach the platform to this metro rail. So that if you intend to collect, we need to mention that we need to collect this information also in access address information. So when you look at this commuter response behavior, so regular commuters were more supportive than non-regular commuters. Commuters who were accompanying with person were less willing to participate in the survey due to their compromisation of personal and privacy. And it was very difficult. There were certain passengers who were like, they had some negative, like critical incident technique that we use. So they were very narrative in terms of their grievance senses. So it is very, very difficult to control them. there were certain, like it is very important to have some questions at the start that generate curiosity and show genuineness of the surveys for this in the tandem and the respondent, so that they can become interested. Previous experience do have effect on their on their perception behavior. So in fact, like if they have experience, so there is expectations on service delivery level gap, and that we can see here if they have experience in terms of alternate transit using. And there were questions related to perceived average waiting time. So in India, we particularly observe the respondents perceive equal or greater than this operational frequency. That indicates that the waiting time is more higher, quite high in, with respect to the service frequency. So final conclusion is paper-based and QR, as we said, different response rate, but similar completion rate. QR code-based is 3-4 times cheaper than this paper-based. And this information, like travel information, satisfaction suffers highest non-usable rate. Certain questions need to be experienced, and we saw that carryover effect, and they opted district into the rating scales. Based on these conclusions and questionnaire standardization, we conducted our main survey for my PhD work. So it was conducted on suburban commuter cell at Mumbai, BRTS at Ahmedabad city, and this conventional bus transit and MRTS at New Delhi. So New Delhi Metropolitan, Mumbai Metropolitan, Ahmedabad, this is also a capital city, but a small city, and then different transit forms of we applied. So such kind of a study helps in identification, creation of performance evaluation indices for any transit system that can be helped to generate policy level, like which attributes is performing poor and which attributes are performing great. So based on that, the policy and can be created to attract riders. So that's it. So that's how I conclude. So
thank you. Okay, thank you, Vishwat. It was a very interesting research. I don't see any question in the chat box. So there might be some questions from audience, but it was interesting because, you know, it's always a trade-off between a QR format survey versus a paper-based survey. And you mentioned that the completion rate actually were the same, but definitely in terms of the social demographic of respondents who completed the QR code, they should be different, right, from the paper-based.
Right. It majorly because the lower socioeconomic profiles may not be having such internet connections or language barrier or literacy rates, so that they cannot go for this online. Wherein paper-based survey that is being assisted by a numerator, so it's very easy to just answer and note down.
Yes.
So I think in that sense, it differs.
Yes. So, for instance, for that QR-based survey, did you intercept the passengers and gave them a kind of a paper with a QR code on it and asked them to fill out the survey? And was there any financial motivation for them, like, for instance, a random prize if they complete the survey, or no? Just
yeah, actually, in paper-based, we had printed questionnaires here with enumerators, but there are certain like this respondents or commuters who were not having so much time during that survey. So what we had alternate option is we had printed a slip kind of, wherein survey objectives, like, and then steps to fill this survey, and a QR code. So they can scan through mobile phone and they can fill through like whenever they have free time. So it was totally on personal motivation. So
yeah.
So that was the only factor here.
Yes, interesting. So then I imagine that after, I mean, the next step would involve analyzing the data that you got, right? And for the weighting, because you mentioned that, for instance, you collected more samples from men compared to women. Do you have any data from the whole samples for the whole population, that what percentage of men usually use public transport? And then I imagine that you will take it into account once you are doing the analysis.
For main survey, we did had around 40-60% ratio, 40% female and 60% male ratios in India, in transit metropolitan cities there. So for main survey, we did had prepared in terms of working population also, like for those who are going for work. So we targeted more responses from them. Such kinds of we did had done. So those are actually another study by the time actually this was conducted and analyzed during before COVID. So during COVID, I did also had done this online based survey. So we had created a database of Delhi respondents. Around 3 lakh respondent samples were there, and they were contacted through WhatsApp, email, that kind of. That is, I am presenting on one international conference being organized in IIT Roorkee itself on 17th of September there. So that is why different work. That is also from this extension of this study. So.
Yes, interesting. For instance, I know that previously when I used to live in Queensland, I was so TransLink is the transit agency in Queensland, and every now and then I received one email about providing feedback. So it was a survey, but to be honest, I never actually filled that out. We have Ross on the call from Queensland Department of Transport and Main Roads. Ross, do you have any insight from the TransLink survey that you conduct every year, and what's your insight about the about that type of the survey? Do you think is it biased towards some a group of people, or?
Before responding to Ross, I would say here only 1% participation rate we observed in India in online survey. So that was very hectic during COVID time. I'm not sure how in Queensland happens there.
Hi everyone, Ross Mansforth here from TMR. I'm not across the details of the TransLink surveys, except to say it looked like a really good work, and I love the comparison between the two cities. So from a perspective of ease, I think we're much more in favour of everything online. So the paper-based surveys really have disappeared out of the mix for us, probably to 99.5% of our customers are much more integrated within the digital framework, so they're engaged in that. In terms of the actual analysis of that survey instrument, if Elnaz, you want to pop through any details, I can probably pop you in to connect to the right people in TransLink who are much more methodologically clever than I am.
No, I'm not sure that's correct. But yeah, thank you, Ross. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great insight. Okay, just for the sake of managing time, let's just move on to the next presenter. I'm not able to see the presenter here in this room. No? Okay, then let's move to the next presenter, who is Nachiket. Nachiket, you are online, right? But
I'm unmuted.
Yes, I'm online, I'm available, but you will have to stream the video because my data is not very good. I mean, the streaming is not very good.
Nachiket, you are talking now, or?
Yeah, I'm talking. So
yes.
The presentation, I'll be muting myself.
Oh, yes. So I have actually your presentation, so I can actually play that. Don't worry about it. So let me just introduce you. Dr. Nachiket Gosavi is working with the Sardar Patel Institute of Economic and Social Research as an assistant professor. His interests are in economics of urbanization and urban transport policy and planning. He has completed an ICSSR funded project entitled Revisiting Passenger Transport in Metropolitan Cities of India. How far do people commute? Dr. Gosavi has 6 journal publications to his credit, and he's a visiting faculty at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences campus. Occasionally, there is invited lectures on research methods and methodologies in social sciences on urban transport and planning. Let me see if I have your correct presentation. I believe you have two presentations, so I play this one first. Nachiket, is that the first one? Is that the right one?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, great. So hang on. Just bear with me.
I thank organizers of BRT4 for giving me an opportunity for presenting my research title, When Weather Made Sustainable Modes Inferior Goods, the Case of Indian Metropolises. I begin by introducing the topic, followed by a brief literature review. I put forth my objectives, the methodology, and data sources. Due to data limitations, I check for the primacy of the metropolises with respect to the district. Then I compute the correlation between economic affluence, meteorological conditions, and commute mode. Then I check for the causation by subjecting the data to regression. Finally, I conclude my presentation by suggesting policy interventions. Policymakers and planners in tropical developing countries like India have a temperate weather mindset. As a result, it is thought that economic affluence or wealth is the sole determinant of the mode choice. I find that there is a paucity of literature which has investigated the baseline commute mode choice. That is why a specific mode was selected. In contrast to this, influence of inclemental weather on mode shifts are well researched. Walking, cycling, bus or public transport and trains form the sustainability quadrant. On scrutinizing the literature, it was observed that walking and cycling are modes used under compulsion. The lack of infrastructure catering to these modes has increased the perception and is forcing individuals to use motorized modes. A strong ordering with respect to the commute modes is observed. In this strong ordering, walking was the least preferred, followed by cycling, public transport followed by two-wheeler and four-wheelers. Further, a strong correlation between car ownership and use is observed. This meant that the car owners would rarely shift to sustainable modes. The primary objective of my study is to understand the influence of economic affluence and weather on mode choice. For addressing this, I compute the correlation between economic affluence and mode choice, and meteorological conditions and mode choice. Subsequently, I examine whether there is a contemporaneous relationship between economic affluence and weather. I follow a purely quantitative approach. The universe of my study are 52 metropolises of India. I use the zonal level data or the city specific data. The population data is drawn from the Census of India 2011. The weather data is extracted from India Meteorological Department. The total vehicles registered data is collected from the Road Transport Yearbook. For elucidating my research, I have used the following concepts. Commute, that is a trip undertaken for assessing non-agricultural wage employment. Economic affluence. For my study, I have defined economic affluence as the ratio of total registered four-wheelers to the total registered two-wheelers registered in the metropolis. This measure is the inverse of the measure used by law 2015. The range of this measure lay between 0 and infinity. Inferior goods. For non-economist, an inferior good is defined as a good whose consumption reduces with the increase in income. And comfort index. I define comfort index as EH ratio between the summer season daytime high to winter season daytime high. Here I have considered the arithmetic mean of the last 10 years or long period average. This concept arises from the idea of heat exhaustion. As the commute data was collated at the level of the district with two sub-levels, namely urban and rural, direct attribution of the commute data to the specific metropolis was not possible. Therefore, I checked for the primacy of the settlement with respect to the district population. I observed that Delhi was spread over 9 districts and Mumbai was spread over 2 districts. In contrast to this, the city of Vasai Virar and Thane were situated in the same district. In all the cases, I observed primacy. This meant that I can attribute the entire commute to the specific metropolis. This slide shows the commute distance pattern for all the metropolis. It was observed that in a bulk of the metropolises, around 60% of the commute routes were for a distance of less than 5 kilometers, a distance that can be covered using non-motorized modes like walking and cycling. Newman and Kenworthy have shown that the distance traveled and the modes are directly linked to the urban structure. In the backdrop, by administrating the commute data to parallel analysis, I tried to check whether the cities were having different commute characteristics. To my surprise, all the cities clubbed in a single cluster. This meant that, irrespective of the urban structure, all the cities were having similar commute distance pattern. From this, I could infer that variables like economic affluence and weather may be the only variables that may be affecting the mode choice. In the present slide, I compute the Pearson correlation. Though the idea was to look at the influence of economic affluence and weather conditions of the sustainable quadrant, I have even considered motorized modes. Walking is positively related to economic affluence, while it is negatively related to comfort index. The formal correlation appears to be theoretically inconsistent. Similar inconsistency is observed with respect to public transport, which shows a positive sign with respect to economic affluence. Train use is not correlated to any of the variables that I have considered. At a cursory glance, it can be inferred that cycles and two-wheelers are close substitutes and show similar correlation signs. The research by Tripathi et al. In 2019 shows a contemporaneous relation between meteorological conditions and growth of towns. I too subject my commute mode data to regression analysis. It was observed that for walking, economic affluence had become statistically inconsistent, and the sign of the comfort index has changed from negative to positive. This means that walking was being used as a mode under compulsion, and that with improvement, individuals would prefer to shift to two-wheel mobility. The negative sign of economic affluence shows that cycle is an inferior good. The positive relation of comfort index with cycling shows that, in contrast to the theoretical cold weather, understanding cycle as commute mode is used even in extreme weather conditions. My research finds that the two-wheeler use is negatively related to economic affluence. This corroborates the finding of Mahindra 2015 and Low 2015, wherein it is shown that two-wheeler ownership is an intermediate step for owning a four-wheeler. Economic affluence and four-wheeler use are positively related. The positive relation of comfort index and four-wheelers use for commute shows that with adverse temperature conditions, use of four-wheelers will increase. This is a strategy to overcome weather-induced discomfort. The negative sign with respect to economic affluence represents this phenomenon. An inverse relation between bus use and comfort was observed. This relation indicates that in moderate weather conditions, bus use will increase. This relation is in stark contrast to the results of the correlation. We attribute this contrast to the interaction between comfort index and economic affluence. A positive relationship between relative humidity and bus was observed. This result is in line with the theoretical understanding of the impact of weather on mode choice, that is, tropical weather conditions have a positive influence on bus-based commuter. From the results, I propose that infrastructure that reduces weather-induced discomforts needs to be developed. This will not only improve the use of walking and cycling as primary mode of commute, but will also positively influence the use of bus and trains. I do acknowledge that the research is in its present form has certain shortcomings. That is, metropolitan level commute data was not available and one had to extrapolate. As a next step to understand mobility, I plan to undertake studies which will map the psychological and physiological constructs of the distance. I'm putting forth certain references that were used extensively to the present research. I thank you. Your constructive feedback, suggestions are welcome.
Okay, great.
Audio now unmuted. Zoom meeting. Elnaz.
Yeah. So Nachiket, you can unmute yourself. I see that you are on mute, which is perfect. Thank you. I don't see any question on the chat box.
To every uploading tool space. Zoom meeting.
Is that coming from my end?
I think you're speaking, nothing else. Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Nachiket, for the presentation. So you didn't find any correlation between train and economic affluence, right? And also weather. Was I right? Do you reckon what could be the reasons?
In what way? Basically, in the case of trains, they are not going to give you first and last mile connectivity. So your correlations with respect to train, which was statistically insignificant, was because of that the first mile and the last mile connectivity doesn't exist for a train-based service.
Oh, okay. Yes. And for the walking also, it was mentioned that the sign changed. And what was inside the parentheses? They were the t-value or
It was a standard error.
Oh, standard error. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Yes, because I saw that like those 3 asterisks. So those 3 asterisks, it meant that they were significant at 99% of a statistical level. Am I right?
Yes, you're correct.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So walking, then it changed when you started. So do you reckon what was the reasons for that?
Basically, if you look at economic activities, I mean, if you look at the research by Tripathi in 2015, it said that moderate temperature gets more populous inside into the cities. So you will have cities like Bangalore, Pune, or even Srinagar in Kashmir growing at a much faster rate because of the temperate weather condition. But the moment you look at economic affluence, what happens is that people who are affluent will automatically shift to 2-wheelers and 4-wheelers. So those people who are not well off are forced to walk. This was the research by Anand and Geetam Tiwari in 2008 and Rogers and Srinivasan in 2005 for Delhi and Chennai. So this is what is the reason why the sign changes suddenly. And there is a contemporaneous relation between economic affluence and weather.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Is there any question for Nachiket from audience?
Somebody type in the chat box. Not sure about it.
Oh, yes, there's a yes, there's actually a question. Can you read the chat box? I can read it for you.
Yeah, please do that.
Okay, so Kesava asked that, do you think the results you had is as a result of the culture and mindset of the people towards walking and cycling as a mode choice?
It is not a problem of culture. People are ready to walk. The problem is the lack of infrastructure. The moment the risk perception increases, I will shy away from riskier modes like walking and cycling. The Railway Infrastructure Technical Engineering Services in their 1998 report said that only 30% of the urban roads had some kind of footpath. So the lack of footpath is going to impact my risk perception. And so is the study by Rahul and Verma 2013.
Yes, yeah, great. Thank you. Ross also kindly shared the TransLink data. So thank you, Ross. I will definitely share it with the first presenter for TransLink. I really appreciated that. Thank you so much. Great. Nachiket, I think I can actually move on and then play your second presentation.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes, let me just yes, just bear with me. It's opening. And it's another interesting research from Nachiket, revisiting commute in a rural urban mega area of India. Let me just share my screen.
Once again, I thank the organizers of BRT for giving me this opportunity. The focus in the present research shifts from the weather to the urban geography of a rural urban mega area of India and its economic geography. The research is titled as Revisiting Commute in a Rural Urban Mega Area of India. I would like to shift your attention to this part, that this research is a rebuttal to an article published in Transport Policy titled Determinants of Commuting Pattern in a Rural Urban Mega Area of India. This article raised three pertinent questions, which were: A, are the transport and town planners misreading the data? B, is the transport infrastructure connecting no man's land? And C, is this unintended outcome resulting in motorizing of the Indian urban scape? Unlike other research, my research considered rural and urban as a development continuum. Likewise, I have not presumed that individuals residing in rural areas need to commute more. The contents of my study will be as following. After the need of the study, I will be discussing about data source and methodology, understanding the study area, which will be NCR of Delhi. Then I will be explaining about the economic geography of NCR of Delhi, its commute patterns, understanding the dependencies, what may have influenced this growth. And then I will move towards conclusion. And towards the end, I have shown references that I have used for this study. For decongesting NCT of Delhi, the National Capital Region of Delhi was proposed in the year 1985. This is the fourth largest rural urban settlement, which is spread over 32 districts, 55,083 square kilometers. More than 58 million individuals reside within this area. Of the 32 districts, 2 were carved after census 2011. Therefore, for data accuracy, I considered only 30 districts. This is the map of the NCR region. Towards my approach for this study, I have used purely quantitative analysis. I used the zonal level, that is in this case district level data. I superimpose the administrative boundaries on the population data and compare them with the road and rail infrastructure. The road and rail maps have been taken from Viva GIS, and the road distance has been calculated using Google Maps. This present slide shows the steps that I have undertaken for addressing the research questions. Economic geography of NCR of Delhi. A cursory analysis shows that 2 of 30 districts are fully urban, while the remaining 28 districts show mixed characteristics. Further, the urbanization effect of NCT of Delhi appears to be limited to the neighboring district. The present slide is a stacked bar graph of the commute distance characteristics observed over the rural area of 28 districts. My interest reason is the commute trips carried out for less than 5 kilometers. Based on this analysis, I deduce that individuals residing in rural areas either apply to the nearest urban settlement situated in the same district or to the nearest urban settlement situated in the adjoining district. This slide is a stacked bar graph of the commute characteristics of commute distance of the urban component of all the 30 districts. Even in this graph, we find that around 60% of the population travel for less than 5 kilometers to access jobs. This means that local circulation of labor is more dominant, and rarely do individuals travel beyond the neighboring district for accessing employment. The present slide summarizes the commute distance characteristics across rural and the urban component of the district. Further, I compute the cosine similarity between the rural and the urban commute distance trips. I preferred cosine similarity as the trip variable is not jointly distributed. The similarity column shows that the rural and the urban trips, if not identical, are statistically similar. This means that no separate policy is necessary. The present slide is the infrastructure overlap. That is, I have merged the administrative district boundaries with the location of the urban settlement and the rail and the road infrastructure. I assume that individuals are rational and will try to optimize on this utility of travel by residing in close vicinity to their work. Further, I assume that all the urban settlements expanded in concentric circles. Using these assumptions, I compute the minimum distance between Delhi Municipal Corporation and the nearest urban settlement that was showing primacy. The table shows this. From this table, I inferred that barring Noida, none of the other urban settlements grew as labor births. That is, majority of the urban settlements were self-sufficient in generation of jobs, and their dependency on NCT of Delhi was minimal. I regress the population of NCT of Delhi, number of urban settlements between the ith urban settlement and Delhi, the road distance between the ith urban settlement and Delhi, and availability of rail infrastructure, which is a dummy. No, the population of the ith urban settlement. This result will provide me insights about the growth of the rural urban mega region. It was observed that the population of NCT of Delhi is statistically significant and is positive. This means that this mega region is going to expand. Similarly, roads have a positive value and are statistically significant. From this, I infer that the interstitial rural spaces will become urban and that the central place theory holds true. Notes through showing the theoretically correct sign is statistically insignificant. This means that all the urban settlements are growing in a self-sufficient fashion and that there is no rent gradient. Similarly, rail shows a positive sign and is statistically insignificant. From this, it can be deduced that the present railway infrastructure has adequate capacity and or the present railway infrastructure is unable to join the origin and the destination. From this study, it can be concluded that planners need to concentrate on local circulation of labor and provide infrastructure which caters to non-motorized modes. Likewise, the present policies of the expansion appears to be catering to no man's land. This study is an eye-opener for city planners of the developing countries which are facing similar urbanization trends. These are the references. Thank you. I welcome your constructive suggestions to improve on the quality of this research. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Nachiket. Let me see if there's any question here on the chat box. No, I can't see. Well, Nachiket, I was thinking actually about your previous presentation, and I was thinking that what would be some of the lessons learned that we can adopt here in Australia. And for instance, I just remember that I had a project for my students this term, and it was about one of the Torres Strait Islands, which is in north of Australia, very remote area. And for instance, in that specific island, it's a very humid most of the time. The weather is very hot usually, and there are not too many. There are, I believe, just 50 households living on that island, and then there's a school which is kilometers away from the residential areas alongside the coast. And the task for the students was actually designing a sustainable transport mode for these students. Basically, a transport mode for providing accessibility to the school from that residential areas. And I remember that some of the discussions that we had in class was, okay, for instance, can they have e-bike, or even if e-bike is subsidized by the government, or for instance, these new modes that I forgot what's the name. So, for instance, walking can, for instance, school managers do a bit of campaign, walking campaign, and then encourage students to walk, or these kind of things. So I imagine, I was just thinking about your presentation last. Sorry for the very convoluted question, but what do you reckon? Do you reckon really hot weather and humid weather is kind of is a barrier for walking or for cycling, or for using scooters or that kind of shared mobility?
Basically, hot weather leads to something called as thermal exhaustion. I mean, you sweat and you end up soiling your clothes. This is the primary problem. So in the case, there's this research by Lee Q from Singapore in 2018 or 19. So he has said people adjust to the weather, but you will have to make infrastructures so that they can accommodate the adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
So he proposes having bathrooms at the workplace so that people can come, have a bath, change over into formals and start working there.
Yeah.
Right. Regarding students, active mobility. I mean, students are interested in active commuting. The problem is that we don't encourage them.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yes. I actually found one piece of news on Queensland website in Australia that they, in some of the regional areas, rural areas, basically, the school managers, they started a campaign and then encouraged students with their parents to come to school, to commute to school just with walking all together. So it was about I think, a long walk, 5 kilometers walk. For kids, it could be long, but then the finding of that kind of pilot was that at the end, it really encouraged students and parents to keep going, even though the pilot was finished after a few months, because it kind of became a habit. after a while, and then because kids really enjoyed chatting together, and then working with their parents and seeing their friends' parents as well, and parents also were chatting together. So that was interesting.
So basically, the problem in the case of Indian metropolises is that the lack of infrastructure. The moment the infrastructure improves, people will be ready to walk.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
even if you look at, I mean, this is so in Berlin, Germany, they are trying to create something called as green corridors for cycles.
Yeah.
So these are the ideas. I mean, even in the case of NCT of Delhi or NCR of Delhi, the rebuttal came about because people have been talking that, oh, rural population travels more, while the data that was there and collected during census shows a totally different version of it.
So Nachiket, is there anything that you would like to add to the second presentation?
Basically, the idea is the same, that rural and urban commuting is identical. You don't require two separate policies. And the primary focus of town planners for such mega regions of developing world have to be on local circulation of labor. I mean, the idea of a central business district and separated residential area is a bad idea if you want to remain on the sustainable trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But there could be some, for instance, some differences in terms of, I don't know, lack of public transport facilities in rural areas, and that might change the travel behavior.
Now, the idea of a public transport is totally different. So you require public transport in the sense, I mean, I forgot the author's name. So in 1978, in the TRB report, they said that you required a minimum density of 4,000 persons per square kilometer for standard public transport with regular bus services to become sustainable. Now, majority of Indian rural scapes don't have that density.
Mm-hmm.
So once in a while, I mean, if you just want connectivity to the market versus to have the central place theory holding true and you connecting it to some remote area is a bad idea. I mean, your public transport is going to be a royal failure then on.
Yes. I see. Okay, great. Thank you, Nachiket. Thank you so much for both presentations. And Vishwajeet, I also copied the link that Ross forwarded from the TransLink data. It's an interesting one. I will read that report later on. It could be useful for you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Elnaz. I had visited the link meanwhile, the discussion we are on. So
Okay,
it's interesting
great.
insight from there. I'll surely copy that and keep a watch on this. Maybe I'll contact you later on email regarding this or something if I had it.
Yes, that would be perfect. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see our next presenter. The next presenter, let me just again get back to our program. Norris Novat. Actually, he confirmed that he will present today. There's no one from his co-authors today with us, no? So let me check, maybe he has shared his files with us. Let me just check. Oh yeah, let me just check the files. I think it's better actually we have like 15 minutes break. How does it sound? We can have, yeah, so let's just again convene in 1:15. Hopefully I can find the presentations. Otherwise, then we can have a bit of like open-ended discussions from some of the presentations that we've seen up to now. So thank you again for tuning in and for presenting. So let's just have a toilet break and just have a...
The audio now on mute.
Yeah. And then let's again reconvene at 1:15. Guys, I'm back, but I tried actually to find the pre-recorded videos of Norris, the next presenter. I couldn't find that on the box. It looks like that he hasn't shared it with us, the second presenter as well. And I contacted them by email, but I have no news for you, basically. Unfortunately, it's very disappointing that people just withdraw on the last minute without notifying. And the thing is, we actually provided this platform just for sharing our research for free with our colleagues around the world. So yeah, next year at least, I think presenters should be more, you know, acknowledging of the fact that we are all like spending this time for free, just to enable sharing the research. So if they have submitted the research and something, then they have to show up and present. So let's just wait a bit longer. Hopefully Norris will come back to me either by email or he will join us. Otherwise, let me share the link to the other session. Please join the other session as I believe is up and running. Let me just share that in the chat box. So feel free to drop out and join another session. I myself have a presentation at 2 at that session, so I will be there. So Javier, thanks for joining this session. Unfortunately, 2 of presenters didn't show up. So we actually 3 presenters didn't show up. I know that one of them was impacted by COVID, similar to myself. So we actually finished the first 3 presentations on this session. Please feel free to join another concurrent session, which is going on, I believe. Otherwise, there will be another session starting at 2 as well. Javier, yes.
Thanks for letting me know. I was actually in the other presentation. I was jumping to here. I'll go back there. Thank you.
Yes, no worries.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Javier Pacheco has left the meeting.
Thanks. Shams, hi.
Hello, hi, how are you doing?
Good, good. Well, 3 of presenters didn't show up.
Okay, all right. How are you feeling though?
I'm still struggling with headache, but
right.
I'm glad that actually at least I can talk.
All right. I had COVID a couple of weeks back, and I'm still suffering. I don't have, I mean, just fatigued, then dry cough. I mean, like it's been 2 weeks. I'm well, but still not fully recovered. So.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, it was a bit of a struggle because I had also very crazy teaching schedule this term as well. So for the last like 4 weeks, I had like 12 hours teaching each week, and too much. And then this COVID just happened on the last week of teaching, and it also coincided with BTR as well.
Yeah.
And this year we had more papers accepted for BTR, which meant that managing it also made it more difficult. But this year, others actually were not really responsive in terms of, informing us beforehand if they can't show up. Unfortunately, for instance, one of the presenters, Norris, who was supposed to present now, he actually confirmed that he will be in the session. I think there has been some kind of mix up in terms of time because
yes,
he's in
perhaps.
US.
Yeah. Yes. Now it would be, based on the location, it would be pretty late for them.
Yes, it should be very late. So actually he had like 3 papers, and 2 of them were scheduled for the Western. This one was scheduled for Eastern track. I don't know how. So then he actually confirmed that he will be able to present it today, but then that's
we have
fine.
few people here.
Yeah, so it's basically Maria, who is our Zoom coordinator. She has to stay because if I leave, then we don't want meeting to not have a host. Kesafa is our next session moderator. Kesafa is now in China, and she will be my future PhD student. I think so.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if we have her, or maybe she has gone to a break or something.
I'm still here. We are quite disappointed, so we're just getting to know each other. Hello, Dr. Shams.
Hi.
I know your next session is on the other platform. Are you going to be joining us very soon?
Yes.
Oh, but you didn't ask any questions for this session. I was hoping to hear your voice.
Pardon? Can you say that again, please?
You didn't ask any questions for this session's presentations. I was hoping to hear your voice.
Yeah. So what's the time now in your location?
Oh, it's 11:30 a.m.
Oh, not too bad. Okay.
Yes, not at all. I mean, this time is actually very good for me.
It's perfect time for you.
Yeah, the WCTR conference, it was on midnight. I was sleeping whilst listening. It was terrible. I think this time is very good for me.
Yes. Yes, and I'm glad that for BTR, at least we have 2 different tracks, so people can join in different sessions based on their convenience.
Yes. So Shams, hopefully for next year we will have more help from you. Is that right? I
yes,
think you like the idea of
course.
BTR.
Yes.
Oh, great. Yes. Great. Thank you. Yeah, so because this year on Eastern track, we were kind of single-handed, to be honest.
No, I'll be more than happy to help as much as I can. And this is actually like, this time I missed the abstract deadline somehow.
Yes.
But usually I know that this conference is usually very good because if we are not traveling, this is a very good platform to know what everybody else is doing.
Yes. So basically, the idea exactly started in 2019. It was before COVID.
Yeah. Yes.
And when we started this conference, the idea was just providing a free platform, piloting, kind of showcasing it to TRB, to tell them that we can do this, and then hopefully they embed this kind of 1 day or 2 day free conference to their TRB conference. Yes. Because TRB also is expensive. The registration fee is expensive. It's usually for developed countries like those researchers who are from like Africa, South Asia, Middle East, they cannot really afford the registration fee.
Yes.
And getting visa to US
I think it's not only for developed countries, that's true, but also a researcher has to have a lot of funding if they want to go to it. For us, it's too expensive.
It is exactly correct. Yes, definitely. So the idea actually started when I was talking to Cara over the phone, and then she asked me, "Are you coming to TRB?" And I said, "No, I never actually come to TRB because it's in the middle of the winter. It's Washington DC. It's very expensive. Yes. Then I have to seek for funding for my flight accommodation, and then I have to go to Sydney for visa interview, and all of those. And then so we were discussing, and then I said, well, it would be very good if I mean, it would have been very good if TRB had such a like online free at least a few hours to allow us to present. And then she said, do you want to kind of start organizing conferences? Yeah, let's do that.
Yes. And well, TRB, I do go to TRB because I'm serving in different committees, but it's a big hassle, very honest. And for student dissertation competition, for student, it's even very difficult, right? This year in January, one of the students from QUT got an award, but we didn't have business travel permission even then from QUT, and we were trying and convincing. I am one of the co-chair for that award. We was trying to convince, well, let the student just, you know, present something online and then we can just show that online. That didn't happen. So I'm not very hopeful that TRB will take an instance anytime soon to do that.
No, unfortunately the first year, which was 2020, January 2020, at the time still COVID didn't hit like US in January. It was just like in China. And they were very supportive, and they actually announced it multiple times. But then also there were some changes in terms of the management, TRB management as well. And then once actually they had it, they had the online conference themselves, then they stopped kind of.
Yes. They have leased that location, that convention center. So it's actually not beneficial for them too. That's a long-term lease for TRB, that convention center where they have conference for 20 years, I guess.
Yes. So Shams, you are the moderator of the another session, right?
Yes, the next one.
The next one, but not this Zoom link. The Zoom link is different.
I think it's the same one.
No, I think it's different. The one that I have posted there. Because I have also a presentation there. I have to.
Yes, I got another link for this one. So yes, it's different.
Yes. That's good. So perhaps we can join another session.
I'll just log in and then see how things are going.
So Kesava and Maria will just stay here. So sorry for that, guys. But please, Vishwajeet, I don't know if you're online or you're gone. Please also consider joining another session if you're listening to us. If not, you can stay for the next session, which will start at 2, and Kesava will moderate.
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right. I'll see you in another session. Nice talking to you, Kesava.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Shams. Looking forward to meeting you in person very soon.
Yes. Someday. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, Maria, I made you host, and now I leave. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, Maria. It seems like we're the only two people left here.
Hi there. So are
Yeah.
you starting next year? Is that what's happening with you?
I can't really hear you. What did you say, please?
Are you planning to start a PhD soon?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm working towards that.
So when will you start to do that?
In January.
Okay, that's exciting.
Very much so. Very much so, and quite intimidating, truthfully speaking. I don't know if I have what it takes, but I'm working towards it.
Oh well, enthusiasm is part of it.
Definitely. Definitely. And I am quite excited. I mean, it's a whole new step and a whole new field. So yes, well, I have some basics, so I'm planning on building on it and doing some great stuff.
So what country are you from?
I'm from Ghana.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And what would be your topic?
Currently I'm looking at more of crowdsourcing and crowd tracking and anything that's got to do with mobility and transportation, and I mean the crowd, right? Because right now we're looking more at reducing emissions. So I feel crowd shipping, crowdsourcing, crowd tracking is quite a huge industry that we could tap in. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on.
Okay. So that was like the keynote speaker today. She was talking about a lot of those things that you're just mentioning now.
Yes, I was really excited when I got there and she was talking about it. I got quite a bit of ideas. Mostly my research is mostly in freight too. So I was quite excited with what's going on in Singapore. Singapore is going good. It's doing great work there. Yeah. So yeah, maybe later I can connect with her and maybe we can do something together if she's willing.
Yeah. So are you currently doing a master's now, or are you finished? That?
Yeah, I graduated this year. So I'm currently I graduated in June, so July, August, September. I'm trying a little bit to learn the Chinese language to, give myself a boost there. But yeah, basically
Wow.
speaking.
So that's Mandarin that you're trying to learn, is that?
The basic one, yes. The very basic one. The one that can aid me in conversation, but not the very difficult one. I mean, I'm living here, so let's try and do the best we can.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah. What about you? Tell me something. I can't even see your face. Please, can you turn on your camera if you don't mind?
So I'm the center manager for Research Center Integrated Transport Innovation. So I help Elli and other academics at UNSW looking after transport. So I help them with their finance, I help them with the conferences. So we actually had a large conference on Wednesday. It was actually to do with evacuation planning. So it's quite interesting. So there's lots of so transport in different areas. So not just optimization, but there's also human factors, obviously with evacuation, and then there's the psychology about that, and then autonomous vehicles, and so and then activity-based modeling. So we do quite a diverse range of transport here. So I think when I first started, so I don't have a transport background. I used to work with so I have an accounting background.
Wow, that must have been crazy.
Yeah, so I help run the center, but it's interesting, and it's good to hear about the different strategies in the different worlds of, like, Thailand, Singapore. Yeah, I look forward to hearing about Ghana as well. So I thought yesterday I was listening to the talk about in Thailand. So the keynote was talking about Thailand. I thought that was very interesting, and I was just talking to some people from Thailand. I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize the speed limit in Thailand was 90 kilometers an hour, and then before they put that GPS trackers in, people were doing crazy things like 130 kilometer. Yeah, I thought it was amazing. It's very interesting. Because in Australia you do have a tracker, but it's not GPS located, similar to Thailand. You're speed limited, but not like Thailand. And when you speed, you get an automatic fine or something like that in Thailand. You know? But in Australia, you don't. You have to get caught. So you have to get caught. Yeah, that's right. So I think Singapore is also very similar. You automatically get a fine if you're over a certain tolerance level. So I thought that was quite interesting because from an Australian standard, like, you can catch me. If you catch me, then you can give me a fine. Or on camera, not GPS located, which I think was interesting. So I'd be interesting to find out, in India, what sort of things they do there, or in Ghana, how do they, how do you do that optimization or work out all these interesting things? So every country is very different. So yeah.
Yes. I mean, well, I feel that there's quite a lot going on right now in the field of transport, and it would be great if you could adopt it. You could optimize it and make it work effectively and efficiently for your country. I really love the countrywide. I mean, I could imagine the amount of, resources that had to go into putting into something so huge and so widespread for an entire country, right? But I think they are reaping the benefits right now. They don't have people that are running away from fines and stuff like that. So they are definitely reaping the benefits. I'm sure there are little hitches here and there, but yes, they are reaping the benefits, right? And I think there's been quite a significant reduction in their accident rates, the crashes. I mean, more safety, yes, and accessibility for everybody. And I think that's our next session. And I'm actually looking forward to new things that are happening in this regard too.
What about in India? Our colleagues in India, how is your research, and what have you learnt so far? Anything interesting? No? Hello?
I think I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, actually, I was away. I didn't catch up the conversations. So if you can give me a little background, then I can probably speak.
We were just talking about the keynote speaker from yesterday, and what I thought was interesting. I'm just wondering was there any specific things that you found interesting in the conference so far that you wanted to share with us? What your thoughts were.
Okay, actually, last night here in India, I attended one session that was on public transport. So it was great. Actually, what I found in BTR is from different locations, you all can connect at a particular time and remotely. So that is the being great advantage of this conference that I have found. I think since on the first edition, I think it started from COVID, right? 2020, I guess. So it started.
Yes, I think Elli advised it started prior to COVID, and lots of people were interested in helping promote it. But once COVID started, everyone was getting online, and this is the type of forum that everyone's starting to utilize. And so not as much sharing.
Yeah, actually that time I was attended as a participant. This time I attended as a presenter. So next time too, I'll try to present something. I think it's great the use of this meeting some experts, people working in this direction, like collaboratively.
So what's your research area?
My research area is public transport. Actually, it's a public transport performance assessment. I think on morning, on this session, actually, I presented one, how to collect data. You were there, Maria.
No, I thought it was interesting. I actually was watching some videos of like India's public transport because I was one of my colleagues was doing stop and go in India, and yeah, and we were looking at buses on video. It was quite interesting on the concept of stop and go for public transport.
Okay, so where he's from? She's from, your friend?
From UNSW.
USW, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I was looking at the video, because I was like, what are you doing today? Because he was watching videos of like these buses and they would stop and then pick up people, and then he would, you know, and I was thinking, this is so, you know, what are you doing? So I was watching, yeah, you know, when people like looking at public transport and looking at videos of buses, I'm thinking, what's that about? But yeah, it's interesting concept. But you look at from assessment point of view, is it like for surveys? Is that
Actually, it's overall, it's like actually PhD topic mine. So it first starts with survey from commuter satisfaction and importance survey, and from that survey we analyze, we identify pitfalls of any improvisation area that is lacking, and what are the policy measures that need to be done to make it more attractive to the rider in terms of like fair,
so like
maybe
activity-based modeling.
Not activity, actually, it's more of customer marketing strategy kind of. If you talk about a product service.
Yeah. So you want to know what would attract more customers to share in the public transport sector then? Yeah. Oh, the psychology behind it. So maybe behavioral.
Psychology behind all these things, and then
the choices
what policy measures need to prepare for those.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds very interesting. I mean, today's presentation on humidity and weather patterns affecting walking and
from
cycling. Yeah.
I think actually before that, I just finished my presentation. Actually, I think you were not joined at that.
Yeah. I think when you look at it. Yeah, Maria,
I was just going to ask you. I was going to ask you. So, what sort of community uptake? How do you fund your research? Like, how do you get people to help you with your surveys? How does that work?
Oh, it's more or less like requesting them to participate. Like it's on personal motivation purely. We ask them whether we are willing to share your information in terms of travel, personal, and your satisfaction level with respect to certain attributes which define service quality.
So how do you get them to participate? Do you send out a mass email, or do you on the street to get the information? How?
On transit itself. So on public transport itself, we go there with a questionnaire in one hand, and we request everyone, so please participate in this survey. So it will take around 10 to 12 minutes of yours. So this is like my research, and this is like we are doing such kind of things. So we'll explain them within a minute, and then if they find interested, okay, so then we will ask questions related to travel, personal, and satisfaction related. So that's how it goes.
So do you offer them any incentives?
It depends actually. We conducted 4 locations. So on Mumbai metropolitan city, so people are more busier than any other places. So we need to provide incentive. Because without incentive, they won't stay, they won't agree to participate.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, one of my research papers, I was conducting a survey, And I realized that most people start and they don't finish. So I was wondering, how do you handle that? Is it because you're there in person, so you're able to tell them what to do and encourage them to finish, or mostly what you do?
Yeah, actually, before starting the interview itself, we ask like it will take 10 to 12 minutes. So if you are willing to, if you have that much time, so then I will start the survey. So even after, I think midway, many times it happens that when we start the survey and after like they agreed that will stay for 10-12 minutes, but midway they will say, okay, I have to go, I have to leave. So they will leave. So we cannot do anything for those people because it's totally request oriented. So, we cannot do, we only can request them.
Yes, definitely.
How is so where are you from, Keseva?
I'm from Ghana.
Ghana, okay.
Yes.
So yours, which university do you belong to?
I'm actually a current graduate and a PhD candidate in UNSW. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are a PhD candidate there in UNSW. Okay. So
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm also a
I
PhD
sound very
candidate.
excited, don't I? Yes, I am.
Okay. So how's being journey so far going?
Oh, well, things in China, we are getting there, right? Because of the COVID situation, there's a lot of restrictions, traveling, movement. Basically mobility is quite restricted in China due to the COVID situation. I mean, we have a zero tolerance towards COVID policy. So, I mean, it means life is quite difficult, right? We've got to make allowances to ensure that things go well. So we have frequent tests, we have lots and lots of, little things. I mean, just recently we had some of the cases in the province that I'm currently in. And I mean, we are all waiting for the rollout that's going to come as a result. So I think maybe if the numbers keep increasing, there might be not maybe a permanent lockdown, but maybe a semi-lockdown to those cities that have quite a number. So when I was speaking to Elli today and she said she's not feeling so well, she has COVID, and then Maria also said, oh, I also had COVID some time ago. I was like, my God, I can't believe people are just talking about COVID so comfortably. In China, when you say you have COVID, I mean, it's on a whole different level, right? It's on a whole different level. You're going to be quarantined. They're going to be testing you every day. I mean, it's like a major something. So how comfortable they were means that, I mean, different parts of the world is taking the COVID situation at different stages and in different ways. So
I think here in India last year, so it was of 6 months complete. I was at home. So university was shut down. So we were sent back immediately within 24 hours. We needed to vacate hostels and all. So it was very frustrating situation there.
Yeah.
And staying home for 6 months, doing nothing, like just coming online, and it's like we are not having so much resources available at home also, because university and home are different things. So it was very frustrating. I think that also a phase of this nowadays.
It's understandable. So currently, how is the situation?
So your PhD topic is transportation safety.
No, not necessarily. My topic has more to do with crowd logistics and crowdsourcing, right? So it's more of more of in that regard, and people's attitude towards crowds and stuff like that, right? We want to know how people are willing to adopt crowd shipping, crowd logistics in Africa, most especially, and then around the world too. Yes, because currently I feel that is much more cost effective, and most importantly, in terms of green and in terms of carbon emissions, is much more better. And in terms of consolidation of freight from one place to another, doing crowd is much more economically sound and cheaper for everybody involved. So that's where my research direction is towards. And I mean, it's more of a broader field. So as I move forward, I'm hoping to narrow it down and do a few collaborations here and there, get things rolling.
Here in India, one professor, Professor Ashish Verma from IISC, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. So he's working in that direction, crowd mobilization. So he has a few publications also. So actually, there is one religious event here in India happens every on like it's on every 2 years. So we say it as Kumbh Mela, something. So it's a large gathering of around more than lakhs of people will gather to take a holy dip on Ganga River. So I think on that he has studied a lot. So if you want, you can refer him, you can contact him. So,
definitely. Thank you so much. I will definitely do that. Right. I think collaboration is the way forward right now, so that we can, do more.
Everyone is having different technical specialties, so that helps, right?
So what was the name of that professor? There's this one that I've worked with, like our groups worked with before. He is from IIT Madras, I think, and he also does large crowds.
Yeah, he's also a study.
So what was the one that you mentioned? What was the name of? Can you type it in the chat?
Yeah, just I'm writing down.
But yes, I thought it was quite interesting because he said that for your religious festival, they did a survey with GPS or something, and like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who were part of the different holiday festivals or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know this one.
Okay, you know him.
Verma.
You know everyone.
No, I don't know everybody.
I know, right?
But they visit us. They visit UNSW. So our director, he's actually from India as well, and so Vinayak Dixit, and so he was from IIT Delhi, and he has a lot of contacts with different people from India. So yes, so we have met quite a number of people. They come and they talk. But yes,
we have one conference here in actually I'm from IIT Roorkee. So here in Roorkee also from Transportation Division on September, we have a professional conference. So.
Yeah. So this professor came to visit us in 2019. So yes, it's quite he also very interesting research, and I think it's pretty amazing when you're working with thousands and thousands of people. So.
Hello, Patek. Welcome. Our session is about to begin at 12, so please we wait a little bit longer for the others to arrive. Thank you.
Problem.
So are you from Singapore? Singapore? Is that your university?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's IIT Roorkee.
Okay. And what about Prakeet? Is that how you say your name?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And are you from National University of Singapore? Is that?
Yes. I'm an assistant professor there. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, so I'm a center manager for transport innovation at UNSW. So helping Elli with this conference. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So what's your background?
Yeah, I work mainly in econometrics and Bayesian machine learning, and mainly in travel behavior modeling and accident analysis. But I'm expanding a little bit on understanding the behavior using neurophysiological data. So more from cognitive psychology perspective, as well as in terms of how do we use deep generative models to forecast activity patterns as well as the population synthesis.
Okay, interesting. We look forward to listening to your
Yeah.
That sounds
Hopefully.
interesting.
Right.
Welcome, Dr. I'm so sorry. I hope I got your name right, Dr. Ng. Please, you're welcome. Our session will start in a few minutes' time. We are waiting for the other presenters to join us. Thank you.
Hello, hi. Good,
Hi,
good afternoon here in Malaysia.
Oh,
Good
nice.
afternoon. Nice to
And
meet
what's your
you.
background, Dr. Ng?
Sorry?
What's your background? Like, what's your research area?
Well, traffic engineering, traffic and transport. So yeah.
That's a very broad.
Yeah, it's actually
Any specific? So yours is very broad topic, or you?
Because the thing is, I've done quite a lot of simulation study and then also travel behavior just recently, because the thing is during COVID, there are not so many things that we can do. We cannot go into the lab, and then yeah, of course, need to divert a bit. So yeah, so I also do something related to women in transport, something to do with their safety, things like that.
Oh,
okay. Sounds interesting. I'm excited to hear your presentation. I'm all about women. Ooh.
Oh, well, yeah.
We have a researcher at UNSW. His name is Miyad Sabri, and he was doing some research for women, like safety for women in the evening. So yeah, so maybe that's sort of aligned to your area as well.
Yeah, so the thing is that's something related to it as well, because I think for women, gender equality in transport, especially because whatever that we design, especially for transportation infrastructure, they don't have gender, but we need it at some point. Not really for gender, but somehow inclusive group, something like that.
Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Challa. Welcome. Nice to meet you. We are looking forward to your presentation. We are going to give it 5 more minutes to have all the others join, and then we're going to start. You can unmute yourself and you can just talk to us. We are having fun. We're getting to know each other, so you should feel free. Thank you.
So there are only 4 presenters in this session, right?
Yes, please. There are only 4 presenters in this session.
So do we get more time?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Actually, yes, you do. I mean, if you have more to say, why not, right? We don't want to have lots of lag in our presentation where we don't have anything to talk about. So, I mean, if you feel you have more to present, you can have 5 to 10 minutes extra and then just walk us through it, right? You just have to be sure that we are within our time, and then we can also ask questions. Yes.
Right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Maria, please, you'd have to make me a co-host so that I can share my screen and we can start up.
Okay, let me just do that now. Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much. Please, can everybody see my screen? Hello, please, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody to the 4th Bridge and Transport Researchers Conference. My name is Kesua Opukajimine, and I'm your moderator for today. It's been amazing meeting everybody. I think everybody's doing great work in whatever field you are in. And I'm looking forward to learning everything I possibly can from you, right? Because I'm a PhD candidate and I want to broaden my mind and explore as much as I can. So thank you all for your time today and for agreeing to participate in our conference. So without much ado, let's just go right into it. Initially, we all had 15 minutes, 10 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions and answers. But as we only have 4 presenters, I believe we can do 20 minutes, and then we will follow up with our questions. I will definitely look in the chat room for any questions. Please ask as many questions as you can. Let's make it interactive. Let's make it fun. Let's get to know each other. So for our first presenter, she is presenting on predicting crash occurrence and injury counts at intersections in Texas, an opportunity for machine learning. And we have Mostak Ahmed. Please, I'm so sorry. I'm not very good at mentioning names. Please, if I do make a mistake, let me know. We have Mostak Ahmed. I don't know if I can see him in our session. I don't think so. Then we'll move on to the second one. Please, if you're here, you raise your hand so that I can make you co-host and you can share your screen. No, he's not available. We'll go ahead, and when he comes, we'll add him to it. We'll move on then to the next presentation, modeling animal vehicle collision counts across large networks using a Bayesian hierarchical model with time-varying parameters. We're going to have Pratek Banzel do this presentation for us, and please, whenever you're ready, let me make you a co-host and you can start. Mary, please, can you make him a co-host for me?
Yes. Yes,
Thank
you
you
are
so
now
much.
co-host now. If you want to introduce yourself and then start your presentation, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
Pratek, please, can you share your screen?
So should I start or?
Yes, please, you can start.
But mine is the second presentation, right?
Yes, unfortunately, the first presenter is not yet in. And so we'll start with you. I mean, whenever he or she arrives, we'll fit him into our schedule. Yes, please. Thank you.
Let me do that. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, please. Yes, we all are.
Great. So I'm going to talk about how do we understand the factors affecting the animal vehicle crash counts at segment level on a large scale network using the Bayesian hierarchical model. This is a joint work with Murthy, Kara, and Jelly, and we have spent several years to get it done. So it has been a lot of effort to get this model running because it's a large scale model. A little bit about myself. I'm an assistant professor at NUS, and my work is on developing methods at the intersection of machine learning, econometrics, and cognitive psychology. And I work on different parts of the behavior, which includes the individual level behavior, for example, adoption of new technologies and different sorts of preferences, as well as the system level preferences, which include how do we forecast the adoption of technologies at the scale, at the urban scale. So all these system level and the individual level behavioral aspects are covered in my research agenda. And I also have postdoctoral research positions. So in case anyone is interested, they can reach out to me. So let's get started with this work. So this is just reported crash locations in Texas where the dots represent the crash. So we can see these areas like Austin in the south, Houston, all these areas have high density. So it is not surprising because these are hotspots, these are urbanized areas. So the question that we are trying to address is how different traffic and design conditions affect the ABC counts across the Texas, and that includes over 185,000 segments. So this makes the problem very complicated. And there are other challenges that we are going to discuss. So there are three main challenges. So first challenge is most segments have zero animal vehicle collisions. So if you want to see it pictorially, we plot the annual ABCs of the segments and their frequencies, and you see only zeros pretty much and very few ones, basically. Similarly, when you exclude zeros, then also you see most frequency of ones. Some segments have 2 crashes and the very few have more than 2 crashes. So this is challenging part, that not many segments have crashes. So most of them have 0 crashes. So you might argue, oh, maybe we can use zero inflated regression or binomial regression or something like that. But the issue is we also don't know the exposure in this model. From exposure, what I mean is how many animals and the vehicles have interacted with each other. So controlling for that exposure is very important to not bias the estimates. So that's why we don't know the exposure, and we have to find a way to control for it. And the third challenge that we have is during the September to October, November, and December, that period, you see that there's a peak in the ABCs. So why is that? It's just because there is a meeting season, and in the meeting season there are a lot more activities during that period, and that's why we see this peak in these months. So there is a seasonality how these crashes happen. So how do we account for these seasonality aspects? So you can see the number of segments are 85,000, but the crashes are just 6,000 to 7,000 annually. So that's why, I mean, there are three main challenges to sum up. One is a lot of zeros, unknown exposure, and seasonality. So what literature does so far is they just use the correlations between road segments and ABC counts and try to see whether this characteristic is related with the ABC counts. Or sometimes they use the kernel-based smoothing to identify the hotspot locations. But the issues remain there. The one is we can't understand the relative importance of attribute because we are finding the bivariate relationship, not controlling for other factors. So if we do that, then we can't figure out which variable is more important while we control for other variables. And the second issue, all three issues that I mentioned have not been addressed. So basically, you need to develop a model which can mimic the data generating process of the AVCs. And with the data generating process should capture all these three aspects: unknown exposure, seasonality, and too many zeros. So the main contribution of this study is we develop a model which accounts for all these three things and show that the model mimics the data. And once the model mimics the data, obviously not only in sample and out of sample as well, then we can use that for the inference as well as the prediction. So that's the main contribution, how we incorporate all these aspects. So let's start with the modeling part. So we assume that the crash counts follow a binomial distribution with where n is the number of animal vehicle interactions and p is the probability of the crash, right? So what we do to address the first challenge, the unknown exposure, this n, which has the s and t subscript, s is for the segment, t is for the time, that's the month basically. So we have the s is for the segment T is for the month. So this is the number of crossings, as I mentioned. So what we do is we model this number of crossings using Dirichlet process. What Dirichlet process does, it creates the latent clusters of the animal vehicle crossings without even observing them. And we will see how do we identify these animal vehicle crossings in the model for each month. It also helps us to handle this zero inflation part because the segments with fewer animal vehicle crossings will automatically be segmented. So it takes care of the first two issues naturally. What we do is the PST, the probability, we also make it, we use the logistic function to define it, but what we do is we introduce some time varying parameters in the PST that I will detail later. And adding those parameters help us in taking care of the seasonality aspect. Another important part about the estimation of this model is it's worth noting that the binomial distribution doesn't have conjugate priors. So this detail is for those who have a background in Bayesian estimation, but the main idea is of the Bayesian estimation is you assume priors and you have the likelihood and you generate the posterior distribution of parameters. And if the priors are conjugate, then your conditional likelihood, basically the posterior distribution, have closed form. But in this case, that's not the case. So to make it possible that the conditional posterior distributions are closed form, what we do is we augment the model with the polygamma distributed variables. And that helps in translating this binomial likelihood into the Gaussian likelihood. I'm not going to get into the details of how we do it, but the paper is there and it's already published in Analytical Methods in Accident Research. So you can go in and find the details about this. So here we summarize the model, which has two parts. One is the exposure model. As I said, the left part is it is the number of crossings which we represent through Dirichlet process. What it does is it allows the flexible clustering across segments and by month of the year, because T is, remember, the index for the month. On the right-hand side, you see the crash probability model, which is a logistic function, but what you need to look at the link function of this logistic function, which has three components. One is IST, XS, and YST. So in YST, in XS is basically the variables which are not varying across time, which are more segment-specific variables. But YST is like rainfall, which is varying across the month. And we estimate the time varying parameter on YST, which help us in capturing the differential effect of the rainfall across months. Also, we introduced one more random effect, IST, which captures the mean effect of unobserved factors, which are affecting the probability. So this IST, if you have learned about the random effect model, then IST is just like a way of including the random effect in the model, right? So it's an indicator. So IST and gamma T are the parameters which help us in capturing the time varying aspect, the seasonality aspect. So it's clear now that exposure model, Dirichlet process helps us in addressing the first two challenges about exposure and the zero ABCs. And the crash probability model helps us in addressing the third aspect, which is the seasonality. So I'm not going into the details of how we estimate the model, but let's discuss few things about the model first. So we use the 10,000 MCMC draws after 10,000 burn-in draws. And we coded this MCMC sampler in R, and it takes around 22 hours just to converge, and on a high performance computer. And with high performance computer, I mean the machines that have there we use the clusters. We don't know the exact specification of the machine, but it depends on when your job goes into the queue. So, but still, it's very expensive to do even on your own computer. So the Scalman and Rubin diagnostic we compute for each parameter, and the average is 1.011, which is good because it should be close to 1. And what it implies is our model is doing well in terms of conversions. To further verify it, we also show some of the trace plots, which also are reasonable and expected, that we have a good up and down movement in the chains. So, which is also a good sign. Okay, so this is just a basic idea about how our model was estimated and how it looks like in the end. So let's look at the data now. So we have several variables, which include the segment length, average daily traffic, median width, and I think the good ones are shoulder width, as well as the controlled access, where there is a controlled access or not, posted speed limit, barrier median present or not. I think this will be very interesting from the perspective of the crossing of the pedestrians, and as well as the terrain compositions and the built environment factors like population density. So I directly go to the results now, and the results are pretty much as expected, but what this model really does is it helps us in understanding which variables are more important than others. So what we present here is the posterior mean as well as the 95% credible intervals. So 95% credible intervals in Bayesian context can be analogous to the 95% confidence interval in the classical settings, because we are using uninformative priors in our Bayesian settings. Okay, so you can just treat it as a confidence interval, 95% confidence interval. And I haven't indicated stars, but it means they are significant at 0.05 significance level. So one thing to note here, if you look at this, obviously segment length is expected that it will have a higher effect on the crash probability. And if we look at the rural settings, more rural settings, if we look at the urban area, so we have the negative effect of the urban area on the crash. So that means the rural setting has the positive effect. Lack of controlled access similarly has high negative coefficient, as well as the median, whether the median present or not. So lack of controlled access and lack of median increases the crash likelihood. So these are expected results, but we see apparently highly negative effect of them. When we compute the marginal effect, we can also realize that which variable is more significant. Obviously, we can have other variables in the model if we have the data. So even if we don't have many interesting variables, the model allows someone to formulate them in the future studies and look at the effect of those variables relative to the other effect. For example, overpass that we have, overbridge. So if we have like overbridge type of variables, whether the road has the overbridge for the crossing or not, all those things can be included in this model. So this is for the results for the 2014 data sets. We have data sets for 2 more years. So we estimate the same model using the 15 and 16 data set as well, but I'm just presenting the 14 results here. To make sure that the results are stable across the 14, 15, and 16, because it is very important to understand whether the parameters are stable across the years or not, just as a robustness check. Otherwise, maybe the effect of one variable is changing over the years. So what we present here is there are other ways to do this. There are log likelihood ratio tests to do it in ordinal logistic regressions. But it's not very easy to do in this case for various reasons. So what we do is we do pairwise t-test. So we just use the standard errors of each of year's parameter estimates and assume them as the standard deviation and just do the pairwise t-test. And what we find is the p-value from these pairwise t-test is very high, which means we can't reject the null hypothesis, which is null hypothesis is the coefficient in 2014 and 15 is the same. So we can't reject the null hypothesis. Obviously, we don't say we accept the null hypothesis, but it means that the coefficients are similar across all 3 years. So which gives more confidence in the model estimation as well as in the results as well. Okay, so now comes to the aspect of the monthly varying parameters that I have mentioned when we discussed the PSP. So there are 3 columns in this table. One is percentage of non-zero NST. So NST, remember, it's the animal vehicle crossings. and posterior mean of the constant effect, which was the random effect, if you remember, sort of. And the third column is the posterior mean of the rainfall, which is the coefficient, which is the gamma t. So it's a posterior mean. So one thing to note here is if our model can generate that October, November, and December have relatively higher percentage of non-zero NSTs. Basically, they have higher animal vehicle crossing. They have higher exposure, which is expected, but the model is automatically able to generate that. Okay. Similarly, they have the positive effect in October, November, December as well. And we also see that the posterior mean is also relatively high in October and November, but the trend is not very clear because in September also we have high, and in April also we have high. So it's hard to determine exactly, but we see that there is the seasonality is well addressed, and I'll show other evidence regarding the same. Okay. So as I said, that this is the mating season effect that we are seeing in October, November, December. So what we also do is we plot the predicted versus observed ABCs by month, and we see that our model is able to mimic them quite well. And this is because in the probability expression, we have time varying parameters, right? Okay, so it's hard to visualize because we don't have good picturization of, but we still have city names like we have Austin, San Antonio, Houston. So you would see that the probabilities tend to be lower near urbanized areas. So if you look at the Austin, you see more red dots.
Dr. Pratek, please,
yes.
You have spent your 15 minutes, so we are going to the 15 minutes for questions. So maybe you can speed up a little.
Yes, in 2 minutes, I'll wrap up. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So yeah, so probabilities tend to be higher on the, you can see throughways, like you can see in the suburbs, in the areas which are not very populated, not suburbs really. But in the urban areas, you see more red dots, which is lower probability. Similarly, what we plot is expected crash count by multiplying the NST and PST, and we can see in January you see fewer crashes, but in October you have much higher, which is expected, right? So that's also kind of a way to mimic the seasonality. So one more thing we do is at different speed limits, we change the speed limit and we change the speed by a certain proportion and see its effect on the likelihood of on the predicted probability of the crash. And we see that when the posted speed limit is 5 miles per hour, the effect is 0.04. When the 10 miles per hour, then the effect is much higher. And when the speed is 20 miles per hour, the effect is even higher. So what this model can tell you at different values of the variable, if you make changes into it, how the crash probability will change. So this is the power of this model, which can be utilized if we had other variables as well. This is just an example how different countermeasures can be evaluated based on these marginal effects. Okay, so I'll just go to the conclusion. So we develop a new highly flexible and semi-parametric framework for inferring the effect of segment-specific attributes. And we do account for seasonality as well as zeros and the unknown exposure in this. And our results show that the ABCs mimic the seasonality very nicely. And we see that in the animal vehicle crash, animal vehicle encounters as well are also mimicked very well. And as I said, we account for the heterogeneity using segment-specific constant term and the time-varying effect of the rainfall. And these findings are very useful if we want to test which countermeasure is more effective. And yeah, we look forward to more such data sets with more detailed information, which can be helpful in creating more empirical analysis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pratek. That's some great research there. And please, does anybody have a direct question? I looked in the chat room, but we don't have any questions there. If you do, please, you just raise your hands and I'll call you and you can ask some questions. Okay, so I have just one question so that our time doesn't really run out. In terms of your research, can we adopt it for pedestrians too? You know, in some cities and in some countries, we do have lots of car and pedestrians collisions. And I think this research could be quite, changing for such collisions and such crashes. So in your estimation as the researcher, do you think it can be adapted and maybe a few changes and a few variables are introduced and it can be used for pedestrians?
Yes, this is a general model which can be used for different situations and different conditions. And the one that you mentioned about pedestrian and the vehicle interactions, certainly this can be used because exposure is the challenge. They are generally vehicle volume, annual vehicle volume is considered as an exposure. But yeah, if we think that the exposure is different than that, then we can use the Dirichlet process to model the exposure. Yeah, so it's certainly doable. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for a very interesting presentation. We're going to move on to, I believe I looked through our chats and I saw Mustik Ahmed. I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best with the names, but yes, I think I saw Mustik Ahmed here. Please, if you're ready, you can present to us predicting crash occurrence and injury counts at intersections in Texas, an opportunity for machine learning. We are excited to hear from you, and I hope that more questions will keep on coming and then we'll have more fun. Thank you. Maria, please, can you help me by making him a co-host? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I had time zone confusion. I thought the session is going to start at 10:30. So can you see my slides?
Yes, please. Yes, we can. Please, you can go on.
Good. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mustik Ahmed. I'm really excited to share our recent work on predicting crash occurrences and injury counts at Texas intersections, opportunities for machine learning. Here, we studied the frequency and injury counts of traffic crashes at intersections across Texas using maximum likelihood estimation, tree-based machine learning models, and deep learning models. So the crash records from 2010 to 2019 were acquired from the Texas Department of Transportation Crash Records Information System. A total of 5.63 million crashes were recorded on public roads across the state of Texas for the period, among which approximately 20% occurred at intersections. 74% of the intersection had zero crash count and 26% were non-zero count intersections, which made the data highly imbalanced. So you can see the chart. Most of the intersections had zero crash count. So many studies use zero-inflated negative binomial model, which provide counts and accommodate the issue of overrepresentation of zeros and unobserved site-level heterogeneity of crash data. But ML models offer higher predictive accuracy. The main focus of this study using statistical model was to investigate the contributing factors of crash events, whereas machine learning models are mostly used as prediction tools in the traffic safety literature because of its higher accuracy. But due to high percentage zero crash sites of crash data, ML's accuracy puts higher weight on common outcomes and results in poor performance for rare outcomes like fatal crashes. The study of ours proposes two solutions for this problem. One, obtaining balanced strategic samples by combining randomly oversampled minority classes with undersampled zero crash sites, and use this subsample to predict crashes, and estimating different crash prediction models for each severity class. So the objectives of the study are to develop and compare models to predict crash counts, both total and by injury type across Texas intersections, to examine key predictor variables, to check the reliability of interpretation of ML models, and to evaluate policy implications of our findings to make the transportation system safer. In our study, the outcome variable is the crash counts, total, and by injury severity. Official records of crash count from 2010 and 2019 were used, in addition to the roadway inventory database, American Community Survey, and other data sources to map more than 700,000 intersections with land use, road design, population, and weather information. Though 74% of the intersection had zero crash count, the mean is 3.18 crashes. The study used 41 explanatory variables, and the most important variables are roadway and design and use variables, like number of lanes at approach, lane width, ADT, and use of signals. Land use variables, urban or rural, population and job densities, walk miles traveled per square mile, and other variables like distances to nearest school and hospital, transit stop density, etc. The study used JEDI-NB regression model as a representative of classical econometric model, and various ML models, namely random forest, XGBoost, light GBM, accelerated Bayesian additive regression trees, and neural networks. This table is showing our hyperparameter setting of different ML models. This is showing the neural network architecture for predicting the total crash count. This table is showing the model performance in predicting total crash count. Random forest and light GBM have been found as the best models considering the R-square and RMSE metrics. JEDI-NB had the worst predictions, but it was also the fastest model. We also can see that random forest and BART models are significantly slower than other ML models. These models were retrained with the balanced strategic samples by combining randomly oversampled minority classes with undersampled zero crash sites. Almost in all cases, the accuracy of the models increases with the balanced data. We can see here that random forest models offers the greatest improvement with the balanced data. As the best model, we use the random forest model to investigate the contributing factors through their feature importance scores. We found that signalized intersections and AADT, both at minor and major approaches, exerted very high weights on the model predictions. Feature importance plot showed that number of lanes of the approaches, speed limit of the minor approach, the arterial minor approach, total walk miles traveled, distance to the nearest school, distance to the nearest hospital, population density, and employment density were the most important features to predict crash occurrence. This study also carried out a sensitivity analysis to assess the practical effects of the predictor variables by implementing one standard deviation increase for numerical variables and binary change for categorical variables for each observation. This figure is showing the percentage change of the model predictions due to change in the variables. Sensitivity analysis showed that the effects of several variables have different directions across different models, making interpreting their contribution in predicting crash occurrences difficult. If you see closely, this table is showing the direction of impact of some predictors in ML models against the common assumptions, well supported by the existing literature. For example, ML says the increase in distance from the school leads to an increase of number of crash events, whereas our JDA-NB says the opposite. ML also says the opposite of what literature and our JDA-NB suggests for variables like intersections in rural areas, small urban areas, distance to hospitals, etc. We also developed neural network models to predict the total crash count by severity levels of different intersections. There was 5 severity levels: no injuries, possible injuries, non-incapacitating injuries, incapacitating injuries, and fatal injuries. This figure is showing the neural network architecture for predicting the crash counts for 5 severity levels. This is our base model, which have been improved later on. This table is showing the model performances. The sensitivity analysis of this neural network model showed that fatal crash count is most sensitive to the signalized intersection, almost 450% increase in counts for signalized intersection, and 1 standard deviation increase in ADT increase the fatal crash count by 168%, and also increase of a number of approach lanes increases the fatal crash count. To improve the prediction accuracy, a deep neural network integrating a gated recurrent unit is estimated for predicting total crash count by severities in the year 2019. The estimated model used temporal data from 2010 to 2018 as input to the GRU layer for capturing the temporal dependencies of traffic crash occurrences. We can see that our improved neural network integrating a gated recurrent unit performed much better than the base model. RMSE falls by 27%, whereas R-square rises by 66%. So you can say that fast crash counts aid prediction. So overall, we have found that strategic balanced sampling improved prediction in ML models. Neural network with gated recurrent unit helped reflect temporal dependencies side by side. Walk mile, distance to school and hospital, population and job density are key predictors. JDA-NB was the least accurate, and the random forest was the best accurate model. But the sensitivity analysis says that ML interpretations are less robust than the JDA-NB results, which suggests that care should be taken while investigating pre-crash conditions and influencing factors using ML models. That was all from me. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I think this is quite an interesting topic. I have looked in the chat. Let's see, do we have any questions in the chat? No, we don't. Okay. Now, whilst you were presenting, I wanted to ask you a question, but I decided to wait for you to finish. You said random forest offered the greatest improvements. Do you think there's any reason why that offered much more of an improvement than all the other models that you tried?
Actually, random forest was one of the better models from the beginning. So the sampling helped it to improve more. We don't explore the reason behind it in our study. We didn't do that. But I think the number of trees, like since this is an ensemble techniques, has something to do with the improved accuracy.
Oh, okay, that's Could also be a factor. That could also be a factor. Oh, okay. So you also classified the crash counts by severity levels. Do you have any data to back the reasons why you classify them in such a way? Or you just randomly decided severe, not severe, according to maybe hospitals or doctor? Maybe if you could walk us through that.
Actually, this data has been recorded by the police officers after when they are reporting a crash event. So they have recorded the severity level. And they have used doctor's opinion to determine the severity level, especially for the incapacitating injuries or fatal crashes, because the doctors are involved in those situations.
Okay. So with your your research, I'm sorry, I don't know, maybe if I skipped that slide, did you give any maybe policy changes that we could make, how we could adopt it in a much more real world sense to help us with?
Yeah, so one of the main policy implication is that not to use the interpretation of ML models like with high confidence. We always should be conservative when we are trying to use the interpretations from ML, because though the prediction accuracy is much higher, the direction of impact is very confusing. And compared to the ZNB, as we have presented as representative of classical econometric models, their impact or the contribution of predictive variables is pretty accurate and consistent with the existing literature. But the ML models sometimes do just the opposite. And I think it is one of the major conclusions, apart from the most significant variables in our study.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. I must say we really enjoyed your presentation. If you could kindly stop sharing your screen, I will start sharing mine and invite our next presenter.
Thank you.
Okay, so please, our next presenter is Dr. Ramin Razoli. I can't see him in our chats, but he did send a pre-recorded video. So if we have Dr. Hania Hashmi here, maybe after she finishes her presentation, then we could play the video of Dr. Ramin Razoli. Please let me have a look. No, we don't. Okay, then I'll go straight ahead and play the pre-recorded video of Dr. Ramin Razoli. He was to present on comparison of IHSDM-CPM and ANN models for crash predictions on two-lane rural roads. Please. Okay. Seems I'm having a bit of a challenge sharing the video. It says it exceeds the maximum allowed resolution. Maria, please, I don't know how, if you could help me. It says that the video that I was supposed to share from Dr. Rosoli seems to exceed the maximum allowed resolution.
Okay, let me just check. Might be a moment.
I don't know. I hope you have the videos though, or do you need me to send them to you through WeChat? I mean, WhatsApp.
They're online. So, okay, just wait a minute.
Okay, okay, thank you. I'm so sorry for the delay. Please give us a few minutes whilst we try to sort it out. And in the meantime, please, you can unmute yourself and we can have a little bit of a conversation. So far, how is the conference going? If you have any things you want to talk about, we are free to talk about it. Thank you. Okay, so at Mustak, Ahmed, it seems like your research was in was in Texas. Is that where you're schooling?
Oh, I did my master's from UT Austin, focusing on transportation planning. Currently, I'm working as an assistant professor at Kutela University, Bangladesh. So I'm at Bangladesh now.
Oh, so how is life back in Bangladesh after some period outside the country? Was there, I mean, the different cultures, the clash, was it a huge one for you?
No, actually. Actually, for my country, we are quite familiar to the Western cultures. So there was not much of culture shock when I was abroad, and also not when I'm back in Bangladesh.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's good. Dr. Eng, please, so far, how is our conference going? Do you have anything to share? Any questions you want to ask?
Hi, so far the conference is actually very interesting. I even joined the conference at night, even though it's actually really in the middle of the night, like 12 o'clock or 2 p.m. 2 a.m. here in Malaysia.
Oh, we definitely
sorry?
appreciate you. We appreciate you staying up so late to join us.
No, the thing is, this is one of the challenging things when we talk about the online version, because we have to beat the, kind of the time differences. But then I figure out that the conference has a lot of presentation worldwide that somehow all the presentation are very interesting. So I could just go with it. I mean, yeah, it's free somehow, so it's good, it's nice, and yeah, networking also can be done. Just like now, I mean, I've never met you before, I think.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite far from, but I would love an opportunity to come and visit Malaysia. Ooh.
Oh, really? We're
Yes.
gonna have a conference actually next year, Eastern Asia East conference. So we'll give you, I mean, we'll extend the invitation to you.
Thank you. I will most definitely accept it.
Yeah.
Maria, please, how are we doing? I'm sorry, most of our presenters.
Sorry, one of the sounds doesn't seem to work, but let me try the other one. You might need to do the other seminar.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's try. Okay, let's try the second person. Okay, I think the second person works. Can we all see see my screen?
Yes,
Hello?
I can see. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, they did confirm they were going to be here, but maybe I think time differences. Some people maybe forgot the time or they overslept or something. So I'll play her Dr. Henesha's video. She is using a fuzzy approach to recognize the risk of pedestrians' unsafe movement, considering weather conditions and signal characteristics.
Hello everyone, my name is Hania Hashemi from Rasht, Iran, and I am very happy to give you my presentation titled Using a Fuzzy Approach to Recognize the Risk of Pedestrians' Unsafe Movements Considering Weather Condition and Signal Characteristics. First of all, we start by a little research background. Based on similar studies, pedestrians are among the most vulnerable road users, and according to WHO, since 2013, no low-income country has seen a decrease in the number of road traffic deaths. It means that, considering all of the studies on pedestrian behavior cognition, the issue has remained unresolved. The major parameters in similar studies which are related to our study are gender, age, signal characteristics, lighting condition, and weather condition. The majority of the scholars have stated that male pedestrians commit more violations. The greatest number of violations is made by young people, and the older people and females generally showed positive behaviors to other road users. The longer red light duration means longer waiting time, and the pedestrian violation rate will significantly increase. Pedestrians are more willing to wait for the traffic signal in darkness. In winter, people are less inclined to wait at intersections due to the cold. The weather would change the comfort level of a pedestrian, therefore affecting their crossing behavior, and other weather conditions like heavy rain will also limit the patience of pedestrians. Why did we use fuzzy logic? Fuzzy logic tends to imitate human thinking logic and is an appropriate tool for approximate reasoning. It has been used in similar studies for managing dynamically the traffic light phases in signalized pedestrian crossings, providing the possibility to change the phases of the traffic light taking into account the time of the day and the number of pedestrians about to cross the road, determining pedestrians' crossing intention around crosswalks, and predicting road accident risk levels of pedestrians and using the results in some beacon devices. The aim of this research is to examine the effect of factors that influence pedestrian waiting time reduction and violations on pedestrian decision-making, driving the decision's results using a fuzzy inference scheme, so that by prioritizing pedestrians over vehicles, the traffic flow will be informed of pedestrian violation probability. Focusing on temperature and rainfall, given the study area's geographical conditions, which is in Rasht, north of Iran, with high annual rainfall. The data collection the data was gathered during the 3 seasons of summer, autumn, and winter in order to capture the ideal weather conditions, such as temperature and rainfall. This meteorological data is gathered from local sources. On weekdays, recordings are made between 7 to 9 a.m., at noon between 11 to 1 p.m., and at the evening between 3 to 5 or 6 p.m., and at night between 7 to 8 p.m. The length of the traffic light green phase during these hours was in the range of 58 to 120 seconds. A total number of 1116 pedestrians waiting time were counted at the end. The 2 chosen intersections are the intersections of the city's main arterial streets, with a significant number of pedestrian groups including students, administrative staff, and medical personnel, as well as shopping malls, bus stations, taxis, and the city's central park. Well, the diagram shows the study's research method. The input data includes age, time of day, time of arrival, and the remaining time of the red phase, temperature, and precipitation. These input data goes to fuzzy inference system The membership functions are defined based on the results of statistical tests and recordings. After that, we have output membership function, which is waiting time, and it will translate into crisp values through defuzzification. If the output variable, meaning the waiting time, is more than the remaining time of the red phase, no violation will occur. But if it is less, there is a possibility of unsafe crossing. The linguistic variables are described with the aid of experts' opinions to classify various sets of input data and the output. We have used a triangular membership function and trapezoidal membership functions, which the equations are shown in this slide. By implication of the defined constraints, samples of the membership functions of the input and output variables are shown in figures below. We can see age and time of day as the sample of our input data and waiting time as the output data. A crucial reason why the linguistic fuzzy rule-based approach is worth considering is that it remains verbally interpretable. It has been successfully used to model human problem-solving activity and adaptive behavior, where a classical way to represent the human knowledge is the use of if-then rules that, in the case of multiple input, single output fuzzy rule-based systems, present the following structure. Based on this structure, we have defined 227 rules. Based on the defined data and the results of counting and field observation. You can see the examples in this table. For example, if a person is young and the time of day is morning and the time of arrival is the first 1/3 of the red phase and the remaining time is very low and the temperature and precipitations are both low, then waiting time will be high. The statistics of this research shows that the mean waiting time of these 16 people is 28.29 seconds. The corresponding amounts for young females and males did not show a significantly difference, but the differences between middle-aged females and middle-aged males are large, and according to p-value, it is significantly important. There haven't been any noticeable variation between young pedestrians. The violation rate under sunny weather was higher than rainy, although the pedestrian waiting time is not significantly different. Results and discussions. The diagram shows waiting time based on age. For pedestrians younger than 10 years and older than 50 years is higher in the age group diagram, whereas the waiting time for young people aged 20 to 30 it is almost constant and smaller than the adult age group. The mean of waiting time, according to one-way ANOVA, also indicates a substantial difference between these three age groups. The waiting time based on time of day shows that when we go from morning to evening, the waiting time decreases, and the lowest waiting time has occurred in between 5 to 6 p.m. The more time passes into night, the more time pedestrians spend waiting. At noon and evening, a significant percentage of pedestrians are students and staff returning from a day's work, and exhaustion during these hours can lead to a lack of patience. Night and reduced visibility after these hours can cause pedestrians to be more patient and wait longer periods of time. The relationship between waiting time and temperature has an almost constant trend. At lower temperatures, as in December, the waiting time is lower. There has been little impact at higher temperatures, such as in autumn and summer, and the waiting time remains constant. The waiting time based on precipitation shows that when precipitation reaches to 30 millimeters, the waiting time decreases, and when it exceeds 55 millimeters, the waiting time will increases. According to field observations, the accumulation of surface water and the risk of vehicles splashing water on pedestrians, as well as the slippery street surface and lack of visibility for drivers, makes pedestrians to wait. Also, the volume of rain is so heavy that pedestrians are forced to use umbrellas, and by doing so, they accept a more tolerable space under the rain and behave more patiently. Well, the diagram shows the fuzzy surface viewer based on temperature, precipitation, and waiting time. It shows that when the temperature and rainfall are both low, the waiting time is less than 30 seconds. When the temperature and rainfall are moderate, the waiting time is about 35 seconds. At temperatures of -5 to 5 and precipitation of more than 80 millimeters, waiting times of more than 50 seconds are gradually observed. This waiting period is also repeated when temperatures are above 6 degrees centigrade and rainfall is less than 10 millimeters. The figure shows the fuzzy rule viewer as a tangible illustration of fuzzy inference prediction. For example, when a 39-year-old individual reaches the middle third of the cycle duration at about 2 afternoon, when the temperature is 11 degrees centigrade and the precipitation is 50 millimeters, this person will wait 38.3 seconds for a safe crossing. What are the implications of this study? This information can be used for the benefit of pedestrians and for their safety at intersections, such that in cases where there is a risk of their impatience, vehicle drivers can be alerted by installing a beaconing system next to the traffic lights. As in similar studies, it has been suggested, it has suggested a beaconing system in cases where there is a risk of pedestrian vehicle collisions. In low and moderate temperature and precipitations like 5 to 15 degrees Celsius and 30 to 65 millimeters, which can be identified by weather forecast, signal timing can be designed between 30 to 35 seconds for pedestrian red phase. The red phase can be extended up to more than 50 seconds in temperatures of -5 to 5 degrees Celsius and precipitation of more than 80 millimeters. The conclusion. The interact between the pedestrian and the traffic light impacts pedestrian waiting time and traffic violations. The decision-making process is a complex and unpredictable situation that fuzzy logic and the linguistic terms of membership functions can help overcome. The effects of time of day and age as well as weather conditions could be seen by employing the fuzzy logic. Men had a higher rate of violation and spent less time waiting than women. When it's raining, the rate of violations is lower. When the temperature and rainfall are both low, pedestrians wait less than 30 seconds, while pedestrians wait roughly 35 seconds when the temperature and rainfall are moderate. The shortest waiting time was observed during evening peak hours, while pedestrians were more patient during night peak hours when it was dark. The adult age group is the most affected by temperature variations, with shorter waiting times at lower temperatures like 2 to 10 degrees Celsius and longer waiting times at higher temperatures like 15 to 30 degrees Celsius. And the time left in the pedestrian red phase or the time of his or her arrival have little impact on his or her decision. Thank you for listening.
Thank you all for listening and thank you all for your time. Unfortunately, the second video's quality is not really that great, and it's not really that great. And I really did enjoy this presentation. I was hoping she would be around so that we could ask her a few questions, but unfortunately she couldn't make it. But I'm available. You can ask me some questions. I'll try my best. I mean, we could have a discussion about it and then we could come up with some new ideas as to what we could do. But I think her conclusion was quite accurate, right? Ladies in general are quite scared of, getting their makeup and their hair and stuff wet in rainy season. So they're most likely to wait longer if the weather patterns are not the best for things to cool down before walking through the rain to the next place that they want to go to. I don't know if oh, please, we have Dr. Lynette here. Hello, Dr. Lynette. Ooh, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm so sorry, I joined the presentation a little bit late, but I didn't catch the end of it. But it's an interesting discussion now about the gender differences, right, in travel behavior.
Definitely. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it, so we can't really ask her much questions. But please, we are ready and available for your input. I mean, please say something to us.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that in some places, it might actually like safety is also an issue, right? Whether or not women feel safe in moving around. But in this case, again, I missed most of the presentation, but if it's about explaining why, I mean, sometimes footwear also matters, right? And what shoes you're wearing makes you more likely to travel, to walk or not. Yeah.
So Lynette, are
They
you also
definitely
do you also do women's safety for transport?
Not really, not yet. Here in Singapore, at least, hasn't been so much of an issue. Like gender harassment in public transportation hasn't been too much of an issue. A little bit sometimes you hear some cases, but not a major issues. But I know that it can be an issue in some other cities.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a lady here, Dr. Ing, who was interested in women's role in transportation, but I think unfortunately she left, or maybe her network, maybe we could have had much more of an engaging conversation, because she is in Malaysia, and so maybe she could give us a different perspective.
I heard that there's a women in transportation group based in Australia, if I'm not wrong. I don't know whether you've heard of this group, like WIT, Women in Transportation.
I think I have, but I don't know if it's based in Australia though. I've heard of Women in Transportation. I think they're doing great work, but I don't know exactly where they are based though.
Yeah.
What about Mustake? Tell us something a little bit about where you are, how are women in transportation doing? I know you're a man, but the male perspective is also quite important once in a while. So tell us how you see that aspect too.
Yeah, I think for my country, that's Bangladesh, women suffer seriously from the safety issues. Like the outside world is not really safe for them. And due to the density, very highly dense cities and the public transportation too, like a modest means of transportation is very rare for almost half of the population or even more. I don't work in that sector, but I think the women travel in a very different way than the men in our country, because they have a lot of restrictions they have to follow. They have even particular seats in the public transit to feel them a bit safer, at least.
Sorry, what is your country?
It's Bangladesh. It's a country beside India.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know in some countries they would have dedicated carriages or sections of a bus or a metro, for women only. Yeah, I don't know whether that's true in Bangladesh or the other countries.
No, the carriageway is not like dedicated, but there are particular seats, public transport for the women.
So these seats are designated to them, right? Because in China, we do have designated seats in our public transports for the older people 70 and above. So, I mean, once they get on the bus and you are a young person, you definitely have to stand up because those seats are designated to them. Is that how it is in Bangladesh? I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, but I don't really know much. We do have a few
It is
Bangladesh
like that.
students here,
It's
but
like that. Yes, it is reserved for them.
Yeah.
But that is not enough, of course, because you cannot reserve like half of the seats for them. So they have to come out of that like safe world or safe bubble. And once they are in the common place, they have to share a very rough world.
oh, sounds quite stressful. I can imagine having lots and lots of baggages from the market or something and getting into the public transports, and maybe all the designated female seats are full. What do you do with your kids and stuff? Yeah, but I think we are making progress.
It's very popular in our country, and people who can afford them, they're doing fine. Paraton is the solution for these situations, but like you said, half of the population can't afford them, so they have to face the reality.
Yeah.
And so for your paper that you presented, you were talking about predicting crash occurrences in Texas. Can you do something similar in Bangladesh as well, or?
Yeah, we are trying to do something like that, but the data availability is an issue. In my attempt, we have found that only the fatal crashes are being reported to the police. So we only have fatal or non-fatal kind of situation. So that's a major concern, but we are finding a way to overcome this.
I mean, with research in Africa too, that's one of our main issues we face, lack of data availability, not just the availability, but the right data that you're looking for. You might have the data, but it's not the right data that you want. And lots of data cleaning and stuff has to be done. But I think we are making some progress in all aspects. Unfortunately, most of our presenters couldn't make it today. Our other presenter had come from a long travel, so he wanted to rest, so he left a bit earlier. And our next presenter was mistaken. He stayed. Thank you. Thank you. I also would have been very sad that finally the two of us, Maria and I, would have just been here. Thank you for doing so. But we are having another session. I think that's a Western track, so I can share the link if you would like to join that session. But if not, we can still chat. If any interesting things you want to talk about in any aspect, we can still talk about it. But if you do have some schedules you want to meet, we can end our presentation here. Maria, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about Bangladesh again. I was just going, so, you know, you were saying that there's only fatal and non-fatal, right? So do you remember yesterday we had the keynote speaker from Thailand, right? And he was saying that in 1997 and earlier, that in Thailand there was also lots of fatal crashes, and now all public transport and heavy vehicles are implemented with a GPS system that has real-time response. So you know what the speed of the transport mode is, and you know how where it's located. So I wonder how they move from that to you know, from fatal crashes to that. I'm just wondering whether Bangladesh is that's something Bangladesh should be looking at.
Like using GPS for every vehicles is not feasible yet, I guess. We're also trying to take some local attempt, like investigating the crash sites, taking images, or using drones to take images and then analyzing those images. So the reality is that we have to collect the data because of data unavailability. And we're also trying to use CDR data, but there is some government regulations and bureaucracy in using those data. So data availability is a big challenge.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I think many transport researchers also face the same issue. It's very difficult to collect data, both time and money. Sometimes I would involve some of my students, so they would help me with some of the observations, but only limited forms in given how much time there is. Yeah.
So everybody has the same problem. Collection is an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the problem is even serious due to the corruption in the system. Nobody wants to go to the police because there's a possibility of harassment. So most of the crash events are not being even reported.
Right. It's not even available in the data, right? Yeah.
So if you have a crash in Bangladesh, do you have insurance, or is that
That's
something really?
another problem in the system. Insurance system is not well implemented in our country. So everyone almost goes on his her own for medical facilities. So reporting to the police for a crash event does have an impact for the medical facilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's quite worrisome, but I think we are also facing the same problem here in Africa, so it's understandable. Yes. I mean, most of the time when people get into accidents, I mean, if it's not something that it's a life or death situation, very fatal, I think most of the people just go home and they don't report it, right? Because of course there are a lot of factors that go into that. Fear, most importantly. Maybe they are the ones that are on the wrong side, and they feel that once they get to the police station, they might be victimized and a few other issues. But I think we now have lots of groundbreaking researchers that we can adapt into our systems. And I mean, we wouldn't take it word for word, we'll just manipulate it to fix our system and our culture. And I'm sure soon we'll be able to make some progress in all aspects. Thank you all so much for your time. I think we are enjoying ourselves too much. If I don't say anything, we might stay here the whole evening. I've had an awesome time meeting everybody, but my laptop is about to go off. I need to quickly go to my room and get a charge. So I will leave here now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks,
I
everyone.
really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
I think I did a great job. You should be telling me you did a great job, Ketsuwa. I did. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Nice meeting everybody.